What is going on, everyone? And welcome to the Sports Talk on Tap podcast. We're here. You can find daily uploads Monday through Friday covering all the major sports leagues, MLB, NFL, NHL, and NBA, you name it. Whether it be games, highlights, or just, tier lists, we're here to cover everything. And the NBA, as we know, just ended 2 days ago. And yesterday, if you haven't already, make sure to check out our NBA kind of surprises and surprise disappointments. That was a fun time. But with that being said, Boston has won the championship. They were by far the best team in the regular season with 64 wins. And they dominated their way to the championship. Only 3 losses along the way. The most the team got from them was 1 game, so no game even won 6 games. So I think now would be a good time, and people have already started talking about it. Kind of where does this Boston Celtics team rank all time? And Nick, obviously it's a Celtics fan. Rightfully so, you're going to have maybe a slightly different opinion, a little bit more biased. But I came up with a couple tier list ideas. I don't know if you made a top 10, but I made a list I found, or I didn't make it. It was Bleacher Report, kind of the top 50 greatest teams of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of have a spot where I have them ideally. But I want to start off with first kind of there's 2 teams that I think are certainly better than this team. That's kind of where I want to start off with this. Okay. And that is the 2017 Warriors and the 96 Bulls. I think there's kind of no debate on that, whether someone, even as a Celtics fan, 72 wins, Bulls team. Although they did get a scare in the finals by I think it was the Seattle Supersonics at the time. With Gary Payton and Sean Kemp, but that team just crushed everyone. Obviously, Michael Jordan, the best player in the world. And then the 2016-2017 Warriors, the first year with KD, Steph Curry, both in their primes, Klay Thompson still in his prime, Draymond in his prime. That team was unreal, and they won 67 games on their way to the championship. So I would say those are 2 teams that, are clearly better than them all time. But, that's kind of where I wanted to start, and you obviously seem to agree with that part, right?
No, yeah, I know they're not the best team of all time, and those are the 2 teams I would undoubtedly put ahead of them. The way I wanted to look at it is kind of almost go backwards rather than just placing them who is better than them. So we obviously have the 96 Bulls, the Warriors.
Those are the 2 teams that are 1 and 2. People argue back and forth which team's better. So that's up for debate. We're not here to discuss that. But those are the 2 greatest teams of all time. And then next on this list, so maybe this could kind of be a reaction thing to you. Okay. They had a couple these were 2 teams that were kind of older. In the 70s. It was the 1971 Los Angeles Lakers, led by Wilt Chamberlain and Jerry West. And then that won 69 games. And then the 1970 Milwaukee Bucks, led by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who won MVP, averaging 32 points alone. I think those will be kind of, tough to measure, but they also did go 12-2 in the postseason. And, obviously we know Kareem was one of the greatest players of all time. So I think those are 2 teams that are older that, you could just still say are better just because they probably have the best players and all-time greats in Will. And shout out Jerry West. Rest in peace. Just passed away a couple of days ago. But those were kind of 2 teams. Kind of, it's hard to compare older, but regular season success, I guess you'd have to go with them. It's close though. But then there's also 1 team here on this list, that is an older Celtics team. I'm curious where your perspective lies on this. This team, or the famous 1985 Boston Celtics, led by Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, 6th Man of the Year, also just passed away recently, Bill Walton, and Robert Parrish, who were all in their peaks. And boy, was that team good, because I think that was the first year MJ was still scoring 35 points per game in that series, and they were still losing, and they still got swept. And it's arguably one of the best basketball teams of the 1980s, and rightfully so, because that team was just so deep, won 67 regular season games, and similar to the Celtics, only lost 3 in the postseason. So with that alone, I'd kind of go just that team, just because you have the 6th Man of the Year, peak for peak, Larry Bird, Bill Walton coming off the bench. We talked about Kevin McHale really fit his role well. But this is kind of like where you start getting, in my opinion, to like, it's an argument both ways. And I'm curious what Celtics fans think without the recency bias. Like if you look back, like, a couple of years from now, but kind of from my perspective, I think this team has a little bit more superstar power than this current Celtics team.
Yeah, that would be my question also when ranking where this Celtics team is are they even the best Celtics team of all time? Because it's probably a top 3 team in the history of the Celtics, but
yeah,
if they're not better than the 86 team, that I believe they lost 1 home game that whole season. So
I'll tell you where I think they fit in, because I'm gonna go. I do have them in my top 10, but they're going to be a little bit farther down. The next team on this list that I kind of agreed with was they weren't the 96 Bulls, but this was Jordan's first title, the 1991 Bulls. This is kind of where they just, took it to every team. This was the time where they swept the Pistons finally after losing to them the first previous years. They had just a dominant team in the regular season as well, a 7-9 winning percentage, 88 winning percentage in the playoffs. And they ran through the Eastern Conference. They went 11-1, including that sweep over the 2-time defending champion Detroit Pistons. So, and obviously they still have Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen's there finally, and they just had good role players all around like Horace Grant before he went to the Magic. So this is kind of, you could, argue one way or another. I'm still going this Bulls team just because they were just as dominant, and I just like the best player on the court in Michael Jordan this series, who, isn't an out-of-shape player like Luka Doncic. And they were just – the way this team – it may be some bias from watching that Last Dance, but the way this team was so motivated to finally get over the hump of the Bulls, this team was a force to be reckoned with.
I think I might give the edge to the Bulls because – yeah. I know when we're talking about just simply how good the team was, not just we don't want to get into the nitty gritty, but their playoff run was probably much tougher than the Celtics was this year. With having to go through the team that beat them twice, it was a much more physical game, and that's the Pistons literally were trying to hurt Jordan every time he was one of them, as we saw in that Last Dance. And then who'd they play in the
finals that year?
No, wait. So was that the Eastern Conference?
This was Jordan's first ring team.
Yeah. So was the Pistons was the Eastern Conference final?
That was the Eastern Conference final, a team that just won 2 championships in a row, and they swept them out of the building. And
then they beat the Lakers. Then they beat
they beat Magic's Lakers in 5 games after I think the Magic and the Lakers won game 1, but that was it. It was a sweep after that. So gentleman sweep, like the Celtics. So we're still in agreement on kind of all those teams over them right now. So far.
I think I'm on the same list you are. Are you on the clutchpoints.com list?
I think it's Bleacher Report, yeah. So number 7, because I do have them in my top 10, but I'm curious where you have them. This is another team I'd go over them. This was, if you want to argue, the 85 Celtics were the best team. The year after that, the Lakers also had the same argument, because this is when Magic, Kareem, and James Worthy joined. So this team had a big 3. They had a 65-17 record, so 1 more win over the Celtics. That doesn't really matter, though. But just Magic was that number 1 option, really assert himself as one of the best players in the league and arguably the best point guard of all time. And just, a dominant postseason run where you have to go through the Boston Celtics, the team that was so dominant the year before that, and beat them in 6 games in the finals and only lose 3 regular season games or 3 postseason games. 65 wins and just kind of 2 players I would take over, Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, with all due respect, and Kareem and Magic. And you still have great role players. I'd slightly still go this team over the Celtics.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at the same list as you, and I think I'm kind of finding where I would fit in this Celtics team. So I
am too. I know exactly where I have them. I'll just get out of the way. I have them as the 10th greatest team of all time. I think they would take the spot of the 2014 2015 Warriors, the team that just Curry was just entering his prime, and there was things with injuries that kind of, maybe the Cavaliers would have been champions. I think they would leapfrog that team, but I would still take the 96 Bulls, who were at night. This is when they added they obviously had Michael Jordan, added Dennis Rodman to the mix, Scottie Pippen, and they were just another dominant team. They were 69-13 after coming off a 72-win regular season. So their dominance was in full display. They obviously kind of didn't walk their way to the championship, but another championship for this team. Tony Kukoc finally arrived, that European stud. So credit to this team. They were on another planet. And I would still take the at number 8, there was the 2001 Lakers, led by Shaq at his peak and Kobe Bryant. And this team was obviously just dominant. I think they only lost one postseason game. That was arguably just the best duo of all time before, stuff, eventually gone their way off the court, just like they wanted to just, Kobe wanted his own team, and, they eventually moved off of Shaq, which ended up, being good. But for the time, these two guys were, amazing. And surprisingly, they didn't even have the top record in the conference, but just the way they dominated the postseason, I would probably take this team over the Celtics, and because the only game I think they lost in playoffs was that famous Allen Iverson step back over Tyronn Lue. But this team had the role players, and they obviously had the two best players that I'd feel like much more comfortable with putting over the Celtics. But I'm curious, where would you have them?
So I want to make sure this list is like the same as yours. So number 8, you said, is that Lakers team, the 2000 Lakers. Number 9 on this list is the 82.
I would, if I was Bleacher Report, for me, I would put the 96 Bulls and then the 01 Lakers. I think the 96 Bulls were better than the 01 Lakers, but that's up for discussion. But regardless, I would still take those two teams, and then I would put Boston right at number 10 over the 2014-2015 Warriors. And I would argue, I don't know why that team's so high because of the Cavs injuries, and I get was their first ring. I would. There's two teams I would argue with the Boston Celtics for number 10, but I'd give them the respect because they were champions. But I'd also want to give a shout out to the 2017 Cavaliers that won the championship, beating the 73-9 Warriors. But you could also argue the 73-9 Warriors that didn't win a championship, or the 2017 Rockets.
Okay. Who's number 10 on your list? On the list you're looking at. Not, I know you put yourself
2014-2015 Warriors, the first ring Warriors.
Okay. So my list I'm looking at is a little different than yours.
Where my personal opinion, I'd fit them right at number 10, just because they won the championship. But I would also, if someone wanted to put the 2017 Cavaliers that beat the 73-9 Warriors with LeBron on them, I wouldn't mind that. Or I would also argue for one of the Heat LeBron teams to be on this list. It's kind of tough. I originally thought the Celtics were a lock in my top 10, but looking at it, if someone wanted to take the Miami Heat, 2012 Miami Heat with Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, and LeBron James, obviously, I wouldn't blame you for taking them over the Celtics. But, I would have them around that area, the 10 to 12 range.
Okay. On the list I'm looking at, that 2012 Heat is number 10, which I think is a little weird. I would move the Heat up to 9 and then put the Celtics right behind them.
So okay.
So 10 on the list I'm looking at too.
So all right. So you're moving the Heat up. Who are you taking off that list then?
The number 9 spot, which I think should be swapped with the Heat, it's the 82-83 Sixers. I just think there's no disrespect to this team, but I think, that Heat team was obviously so good. I can't really put.
It's tough with the older teams.
Right. It is. I did watch them.
Yeah. But looking at we obviously had the tier of teams that were just clearly better. 17 Warriors and 96 Bulls. I would also throw in, just kind of looking at this list, I don't know why they were so low on this list. I'd have the or 95, 96 Bulls were clearly better. I'd also throw in the 96, 97 Bulls because they were the same team. They just won 3 less regular season games. That still won 69 games. So I put those 3 teams clearly above. And it's tough after that, but I would still throw in the Bucks with Kareem and the Lakers with Chamberlain and Jerry West. Obviously, it's different eras. I would also throw in the 85 Celtics. I think that's the best Celtics team of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And then going through, I would still put the Magic Lakers, that team. I'd put the 01 Lakers ahead of them. I'd put I'm missing one team. I think it was the first Bulls team, the 91 Bulls. And then I'd probably throw LeBron's Heat in there, the 2012 Heat, and then I'd throw in the Celtics. So I actually think I have the Celtics at 11 on that list.
Now I also have a question. What about like the KD Warriors? Because those teams were disgusting. Like, 2017, 2018 Warriors, where they were kind of.
It's tough because the more I think about it, the more I'm like moving the Celtics down. Because like
there's a lot of good teams in NBA history. Like it's tough to, you got to think of them all.
Yeah. I'd probably take both KD Warriors teams over the Celtics. So that might make them now on my list like 12. There were some of the Jordan Bulls teams that you could argue, like the team that beat the Trailblazers. I wouldn't argue the last team. I think the last team wasn't as good. They were able to get over the hump, but it took them a while with the Reggie Miller Pacers to beat them in 7. So I'd probably go in a variety, like somewhere in like the 11 to 15 range of my, because they obviously still won 64 regular season games, but you do forget about some of these older teams that you just kind of have to put over just to wins and stuff. But the Celtics, still had one of the greatest offenses of all time, offensive rating. Those largely due to their great 3-point shooting. So I'd have them somewhere like in variety. Yeah, you got to go through like how many Heat teams do you take both LeBron Heat teams that won the championship over them? Kind of where do you go? And maybe even like, some losers, the 73-9 Warriors, do you give them the respect just because they won the championship over them? Or do you, bump up a team like the Cavaliers that beat the 73-9 Warriors over the Celtics? So it's kind of, but I would, in variety, have them somewhere in the 11 to 15 range.
Okay. I think another tough thing to do when it comes to like ranking these Celtics teams compared to past teams is that all those past teams have now established greats. Like these guys are so young. Maybe down the road, Tatum or Brown will be, remembered as a great.
Yeah. But the teams that had like the MVPs, like all due respect to Tatum and Brown, like they're not going to have like the legacy of like a Magic or Jordan. Or even a Curry, or LeBron. So like those teams is why like I'd still comfortably put them ahead of, because they won't have that legacy, or those MVPs, those championships, that kind of caliber.
You never know.
You're saying Jason Tatum can catch up to Jordan and LeBron.
I'm not saying Jordan and LeBron's like their own thing. Nobody's gonna.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying though. But you gotta. Realistically, who I think
say Tatum wins 2 MVPs and say, I don't know, 2 more championships. Like
I don't think they're winning MVP. I think comfortably the neither of them are winning an MVP, and that's just because they're so stacked on teams, which is good for them because they might get. I could see them getting like 2 more championships, but eventually you have to count like MVPs and everything when comparing them to these all-time great teams that we're talking about. Which is kind of what makes it tough for them, but they still would give them like the 11 to 15 range because just of how great of a team it was alone.
Okay,
the 1 through 5.
That. I'm not going to disrespect all these older teams that just because I'm a Celtics fan with recency bias, I'm not going to disrespect them and say, oh well, they should be top 6. They were so good. Like they weren't as good as any of those, or I want to say probably 4 out of the 6 Bulls teams they were not as good as.
That I would say. Just Kobe and Shaq. That duo.
Yeah, those teams they weren't better than like.
I'd say and then I feel like you got to put one LeBron team, the Miami Heat.
I would put the Heat LeBron.
So yeah, we're in agreement with that. And then the Celtics, the 85 Celtics, talk about depth. That team had 5 guys as well. And they were also just, how does Jason Tatum's legacy eventually compare to Larry Bird? That's a team where you could argue, could they climb up if they won 2 more? But just that 85-86 season alone, that team was so dominant, it was unreal.
Mm-hmm.
You saw it in the Last Dance. Michael Jordan dropped 50 in a game, and they still lost. So, that, and then just the Magic, Kareem, Lakers. Boy, it was a tough list to make. But, yeah, that's where I would have them around the 11-15 range because, you also have to take those 1 year, like the 2016-17 Cavs, like beat the greatest team of all, or 2015 Cavs that beat the greatest team of all time, or regular season.
Would you rank the Raptors team over this team?
No, I never got that. I would say Kawhi would be the best player in the series, and the Celtics would win in 5. But I think it'd go probably 6 or 7, but I'd probably go Celtics in 7. I think that Raptors team, though, did win like 60 games, but I think Pascal Siakam was their second option, and he's good. That'd be a good series. In recent memory, comparing them to recent champions, I think them versus the Nuggets honestly would have been really good because the Nuggets kind of steamrolled their way to the finals. I think that goes to show really how much talent the winners are because that Nuggets team, that was a dangerous team. I would say they were better than the 2021 Milwaukee Bucks, but Giannis is probably the best player in that series.
Yeah, that was probably in the 2020s. That was probably the best MVP, Finals MVP.
That probably was. Honestly, that'd be a great series. Would Al Horford and Kristaps be able to contain Giannis? I don't know, because Giannis was just determined to get a ring after coming up just short. You also, the one team I may put over them for the 2020 was that Los Angeles Lakers team. Even though they call it a fluke bubble ring, that defense was nasty, and you still have LeBron, AD. That was a deep team. I think they had Rajon Rondo. They had Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, key role player for the Nuggets. That was just winning. That defense was just unreal. That would have been a great series because the Lakers kind of breezed their way through. They beat the Trailblazers in 5, beat the Rockets in 5 with James Harden, Russell Westbrook, beat the Nuggets in 5, and then beat the Heat in 6. And it took a Jimmy Butler legacy game and basically series to win them 2 games alone. So,
would you put this Celtics team over the 08 team? Pretty much
that was another one. I would say the Celtics just had too much offense for that 08 team. Like if they were to match up the Celtics, because people underrate the Celtics defense. People only talk about the offense, but you saw the defense clamp Luka and them. I think that would be still like a good 6-game series. But that'd be tough. That's another Celtics team that doesn't get
KG, who we know how good KG was on both sides of the ball. Paul Pierce was kind of.
You also got to, that would have been a movie series. I bet Celtics fans would love to see that if they could play it somehow.
Prime Rondo.
That's a good one. Although, you know what? Doc Rivers is coaching, so who knows what happens.
So Missoula has the edge.
Yeah, I still think, maybe. I don't know, though, because, there are question marks about Joe Mazzulla, but, probably Joe Mazzulla has the edge. And then another good team, 03-04 Detroit Pistons, that defense. I'd probably take the Celtics, but that'd be interesting, that offense versus that defense, because that team beat Kobe and Shaq in 5 games.
Now I might be pushing your list back further because I'm just going through like all the previous champions. Like, is this better than those, Tim Duncan Spurs teams, do you think?
Yeah. It's tough. I'd probably take the Tim Duncan's one, at least one of them, probably the one where although I would take, it's tough because Tim Duncan was actually carrying, like he carried David Robinson to like 2 championships at David Robinson's end of his career. If David Robinson was in his prime, that would have been a great duo to see, together. I would also, have to make an argument just like for, some people might make an argument for just Hakeem's Rockets with Clyde Drexler that 1 year. But they weren't the best regular season team, so I'd still take the Celtics. But, there's a lot. Yeah, the Tim Duncan Spurs. I would say a team that might upset the Celtics if they were to match up was like the 2013-14 Spurs. The team that just beat LeBron and the Heat in 5 games. Tim Duncan was at the end of his career, but still really good. Kawhi Leonard was young and really good. Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili. They just had the perfect balance like the Celtics. Maybe people like the Celtics superstars more, but Kawhi Leonard was a different breed on defense that time around.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be an interesting team. But yeah, some of these Tim Duncan Spurs teams. But
I don't think you don't want to get too recency bias, but at the same time, you also don't want to get too.
The reason why I didn't include him was because Tim Duncan would be far and away the best player, but he literally carried those teams, and I'm concerned the depth and shooting of the Celtics would just overwhelm them at some points.
You just want to stay even when you're comparing these teams. Like, you don't want to be like, oh, they weren't ever going to
be. Yeah, I would personally take them mostly, but maybe that 13-14 Spurs has an argument. But yeah.
I mean, they were scaring LeBron. Kawhi was scaring LeBron. So
yeah, and they beat him in 5 games, and they almost beat him the year before that, before the Ray Allen miracle shot. So maybe that 2 years Spurs team could have put up an argument. And but that would have been interesting. But yeah, good overall. I think we're kind of on the same page, mostly. Great team, definitely like top 20. Just don't know kind of where, maybe around the 15, 11, however people want to rank them. It'll be interesting though, to break down maybe later on, exactly a placement for them. But, just kind of want to give our overall thoughts, because the season did end and this was a great team that won 64 regular season games and only lost 3 postseason games. So, very good run for the Celtics, and I know everyone's ready for the parade. But with that being said, make sure to like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments where you think the Celtics team ranks all time. We'll catch you in the next one. Peace.